Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to the regular meeting of the North Branford Conservation and Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency. My name is Frank Brugano. I'm filling in for the chairman, Steve Scalvo, who was unable to be here this evening. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. First item is roll call. On my right is our recording secretary, Mary Caruso, Carrie Duque, the town planner, Ashley Joyner, and on the phone is Jerry Fishbach. So he's able to hear and see the meeting. First item of business are the minutes from the meeting on January 22nd, 2020. Jerry or Ashley, do you have any additions or corrections?
Jerry, you have any additions or corrections to the minutes?
No.
No, I do have one addition to the meeting. At the last meeting, understanding that this is a new application, I specifically asked that the applicant for 50 Fowler Road provide a point-by-point description of the changes that were made between this application and the previous application that was turned down, that was abandoned. And the attorney for 50 Fowler Road said he would be happy to provide that. So can you please add that as minutes, because we want to elucidate what the changes are. Any other comments or corrections? Hearing none. All in favor?
There was no motion yet, Frank.
Oh, I need a motion. So
I
gotta
move
carry
to
a
accept the
motion?
minutes.
All right. Jerry, you second? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you. Do I sign this?
Jerry, say aye.
Yeah, aye.
This is gonna be fun.
Uh-oh. Okay, this pen's almost out of ink, but that's okay. All right, so the next order of business is public hearing and possible action. IWWA number 2020-2, site plan for construction of an active adult community, including 97 detached single-family homes and 3 apartment buildings consisting of approximately 100 units, clubhouse, in-ground pool, tennis courts, associated roads, stormwater drainage, extension of sanitary sewer, public water, communications, electricity and gas utilities. Proposed work will result in filling of approximately 12,000 square feet of wetlands, 900 square feet of a water course, and alteration of approximately 9 acres of 100-foot wetland upland review area and creation of more than half of an acre of wetlands at 50 Fowler Road. Owner applicant Munger Brook Associates LLC.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Joe Porto. I practice law with Porto, Parisi, and Caldwell. Our office is in Hamden. We represent Munger Brook Associates LLC. And we will go through the project, and Mr. Lord and Mr. Ott will go over in detail the changes, Mr. Brugano, that you mentioned just previously. But since this is a new application, I'd like to address some housekeeping issues. First, the property is approximately 91 acres in size and predominantly falls in an I-3 zone. There are 2 parcels that are on Notch Hill Road, specifically 239 and 245, which are R40 zoned. The project, once completed, will be an active adult community for individuals 55 years of age and older. As indicated, the project as contemplated involves approximately 97 freestanding units and 3 apartments. The project has been designed and engineered to be a walkable community with a emphasis on community. There will be wide streets, there will be sidewalks, there will be street lighting and planting. The project will be serviced by underground utilities, city water, and city sewer. We will discuss the feasible and prudent alternatives that were considered in the design aspect of the project in the presentation, in the plan that's presently before you. We will discuss with you the 5 wetland impacts, 2 of which are for sewer and will be temporary, 3 of which are for road crossings and will be permanent. We will go over the compensation area as we had described at the last hearing. The compensation area will be the robust, approximately 4-to-1 program that Mr. Lord had explained and will explain again this evening in some further detail. We will, well, you know, I think that is a reasonable overview at this point. I think Mr. Lord can go through the project. The specific points that you raised, Mr. Chairman, are contained within Mr. Lord's letter, I believe dated January 6th of 2020, again, which he will go over in greater detail, but that goes through the point-by-point changes to all of the units that fall within the 100-foot upland review area, and how the design team proposes to address concerns that the commission raised in conversations that we had with staff. So, with that, I don't know if you have the slide that you would like.
So, Mr. Lord, before you begin, your attorneys referred us to the January 6th Soil Resource Consultants document. Is that what you're referring to?
That
Because
is what I referred to, yes.
Okay,
and that's
but
what
we
you-
also have a more recent one
February
dated
3rd.
February 3rd. And there are, one of the things I was gonna ask is.
They're slightly different.
Yes,
Yes,
I
they
know,
are.
Oh.
and that's what I
Different.
was gonna ask. In the future, could you please do me a favor? Can you please give us a red line copy? I understand you have to provide the town with a clean version, but it would really be nice if you give us a red line version, because I had to spend an inordinate amount of time this weekend going line by line through the documents to determine what the differences were. So if you don't mind in the future, please. So which document are we referencing tonight?
February
The
3rd or
February
January
3rd or
6th?
January 6th? Because you did make changes, which are highlighted in orange.
I had exactly the same problem, Frank.
Just a question. The orange highlighted.
That's mine. Those
That's
are-
yours on the February 3rd document.
That's
She
not
showed
in
the
the-
changes.
So the
Yes.
orange is not in this, is not in the January
January
6th.
6th.
I went line by line. That's why I'm asking in the future, give us red line versions. You can do that with Microsoft Word.
Yes.
So also, just for the record, so the February 3rd document regarding upland review zone activities, I labeled as exhibit number 8. Just so that we have a list of everything.
So which one are we referencing?
We will reference the information in February 3rd.
February 3rd.
Okay.
So we're doing the February 3rd one, Jeff.
Yep.
Okay. Are we set?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Could you please state your name?
Good evening. For the record, my name is David Lord. I'm a professional soil scientist and environmental consultant. My company is Soil Resource Consultants, and I have an office in Meriden, Connecticut. I'll be introducing a number of documents into the record this evening, some of which I'll just reference because, for lack of a better way to describe it, we don't need to take a lot of time on those documents. I'm going to focus on one document which we were just discussing, the Upland Review Zone comment letter that I prepared. Let me start off by just introducing, making sure that they're part of the record, a couple of documents. There is a document dated April 2nd of 2019, concerns the delineation and depiction of inland wetlands on the subject property. Those are the boundaries that were established in 2006, and in discussions with town staff, it was felt that we only needed to reestablish and refresh the flagging in the areas immediately associated with any of the proposed activities. Other areas have been marked, as the commission saw in the past when on sidewalks. Additional areas were flagged on the site, but the importance of this document is just to show and document the fact that the wetlands have not changed over time from 2006 to the present time.
So that will be Exhibit 9, just so you know. And that was in the prior application, just so you know.
Yes, and I believe also in the prior application, you had the April 13th, 2006, which was actually an updated copy of the original wetland delineation report. Just lists the soil types and when the field work is completed for that. Part of the
Sorry,
project.
which one was that?
The one I have is April 13th, 2006. It's just a photo, it's just a copy of the original delineation report.
Okay. I don't know if I have that. Would you be able to send that one to
Yeah,
me?
I'll send it to you tomorrow morning. That's not new information, it's just again, a housekeeping matter to make sure that we have soil types and delineation protocols that we use to identify the wetlands on the subject property. The next document is a wetland function and values report, which should be in the application package.
Yep, that's Exhibit 3.
One change to that I'll just state this verbally for the record. That document had a December 2018 listing for the Natural Diversity Database characterization for on-site plants or animal species. I've updated that to the December 2019 listing by the Natural Diversity Database. There's still no sightings listed for either plant or animal species on the subject property. For the sake of brevity, unless the commission has a question, I won't go into the details of the function and values assessment report. Okay, next document is the wetland creation plan. It's dated as revised through January 6th of this year. That continues to present and propose basically a 4-to-1 compensation measure. It's located in the dark shaded area here. That is to provide mitigation and compensation for the direct wetland impacts, both permanent and the impacts for the sewer line crossings at this point in the site and over here. In addition, it's also been discussed with the commission and with staff that the amount of mitigation compensation that's being proposed here far exceeds what is normally in the standard amount of compensation for the level of impacts for a project like this. But it was the understanding that we are proposing that as compensation for the activities that take place within your 100-foot upland review zone as a means of compensating and mitigating for those activities within your upland review zone. The size of the areas have not changed. All the details in the plan are the same. There's only differences that the date on the front of the plan is different. Likewise, the January 6th Wetland and Upland Review Zone Area B mitigation compensation, which is, I'm going to need to come a little closer, right in this area of the site. An additional planting area here. We're proposing to do some invasive plant species removal and proactive plantings in this area to enhance and diversify the native shrub understory in this area as an additional compensation measure, again, to provide compensation and mitigation for the proposed direct impacts and the upland review zone activities that are proposed.
That's exhibit 2, Mary.
And the
Exhibit
third
2.
document is the stormwater
Exhibit 2.
wetland basin planting details. That is for the interior portion of the stormwater management, stormwater wetland structure, which will collect and pre-treat a significant portion of the eastern part of the site and cleanse that water before it is discharged to the north-northeast into the existing wetland structure. Planting details and other sequences of construction for the implementation of that planting plan is in the stormwater wetland detention basin plan. And lastly, the bulk of my presentation this evening is the February 3rd document that's in the application. It's the upland review zone activities, a description for Notch Hill Village development. It talks about the activities that we are proposing to conduct within the 100-foot upland review zone. I'd like to just read one paragraph into the record. It's the second paragraph on the front page of that document. Upland review zones are areas immediately outside the delineated wetland and watercourse boundaries. The 100-foot upland review zone limit is regulated in North Branford. These zones are regulated for potential or likely adverse impacts to the associated wetland resources. Unlike inland wetlands and watercourses, these areas are not total exclusionary zones. State statutes and legal precedents have determined that for proposed activities to be denied within an upland review zone, there must be a likely impact to the physical characteristics and functioning of the associated wetland and watercourse resource. Such likelihood must be based on sound scientific evidence presented to the Wetland Commission.
So can I ask a question?
Sure.
So as a scientist, I interpret this to mean that you will be providing scientific evidence that there isn't an impact.
Yes.
Okay, beyond it's my opinion, because your document says all the way through, it's your opinion, so you're gonna
It
provide.
is my professional opinion.
Correct, but beyond opinion, it says you have to provide sound scientific evidence. So you need to provide you're gonna provide that.
Presenting as a professional wetland
Because
scientist
I didn't
with
see any,
41 years
I didn't see any
experience
data.
in this.
and I have a lot more experience in my field, sir. I didn't see any scientific data in here. So are you gonna present scientific data to support that there's no impact? Because that's what that's what you just read in.
The expert testimony
All right,
of a wetland scientist has been accepted as testimony, evidence, whatever,
but that's
scientific.
different. That's different.
Using best professional judgment.
Testimony is one thing. This says sound scientific evidence, quote unquote. That means data. So are you gonna present data? Have you done studies on the impact to the wildlife there, or to the fish, or to anything else, have you?
I can provide you with examples
From
of
that
projects.
site? From that site? Because that's what this says. What you just read in says very clearly and
Yes,
succinctly.
in my professional opinion, the activities that are being proposed within the upland review zone will not have a likelihood for adverse impacts to the physical characteristics and functioning of the on-site wetland and watercourse resources.
Yes, but
If you
opinion
would
is
like
not scientific evidence. I'm sorry, opinion is not scientific evidence. Are you gonna
It's
provide
based
scientific
on-
evidence?
Scientific studies of what you're describing
For that
are
site.
not readily and usually part of a wetland permit application. I can give you examples of projects that I have worked on with activities that are within or closer to wetland areas that have not resulted in any adverse impact to
Okay,
wetlands.
so you'll provide
and
that at
waterways.
the next
I
meeting?
can provide that information, with,
Okay, just,
as a
just wanna make
reference
sure
for.
just wanna make sure we're clear, because what your statement says is very succinct. Sound scientific evidence. To me, evidence is data, not opinion.
Yeah, well, to be clear, Mr. Lord would qualify as an expert in the Superior Court. He has experience and expertise, let me finish this. He has experience and expertise beyond that of an average layman. His methodology is based on the reasonable scientific principles of the nature of his work, and the opinions that he reaches in that regard are admissible and credible on the issue. And if the point is that that's our burden to carry, I recognize that. And a licensed soil scientist practicing in the state of Connecticut is capable and authorized to issue such an opinion based on his or her determinations in the field, research, education, and training.
I hear you and I understand that, but the statement clearly says, quote, based on sound scientific evidence, unquote. It doesn't say based on experience. It's based on evidence. Evidence is data. So
Evidence is not
I'm sorry, you and I agreed to disagree.
Okay.
I interpret that to mean that you're gonna provide data.
Okay, and evidence takes forms other than just data. Evidence is testimony.
But we're not in the court of law.
No, but the court of law would be the reviewing court on the basis of an appeal.
All right,
Okay,
fine.
but also, you guys wanted this one paragraph
Read
read
in.
into the record. So
Correct.
that we know that your intent of not fixing any of the things we asked you originally to fix are within the 100 zone that we regulate. So you're already coming at us adversarially.
Right.
And so we are going to stand our ground on the things that we find important.
Okay, so the
Because-
process is not an adversarial one. It is not
But
our
for you to
intention-
intentionally to read this one paragraph into the record and want it read into the record, that one paragraph stating that a 100-foot URZ limit is regulated in North Branford, but unlike inland wetlands and watercourses areas, these are not total exclusionary zones, was purposely read into the record.
It is factually accurate.
We get that.
Okay.
But we also asked for changes originally. Most of them happen to be in this 100-foot upland review zone. And we have reasons for originally saying that we had concerns with certain ones, and we had asked for certain changes. So why are you reading that one paragraph in if you're not starting an adversarial relationship
And it's
here?
also factually accurate that sound scientific evidence is data, not opinion. And I'm a scientist, so I can say that. I'm an expert too.
Okay, okay.
If you want my resume, I'll be happy to give it to you. I'm sure it'll overshadow his.
Okay, so I think we're getting to a point that's dangerously close to prejudging this application.
No, it is not.
Oh, but I think it is. So we're gonna continue with our application, okay, we're gonna continue with our presentation, and we're gonna be happy to answer any questions or respond to any concerns the commission may have. In the normal and orderly course. We'll provide additional information as to the best of our ability to satisfy any of the concerns the commission may have, with the understanding that this application gets a fresh look by the commission.
Right,
And
that's
it
what
will
we
have a
said.
fresh look.
We
Okay.
said, it is a fresh look. It is a fresh look.
Well,
And
but
it's-
it
it's
feels
mis-
as if you're challenging
But
our
I'm
expert
chal-
hasn't even started
But
his
you're
application.
challenging
But-
us right away too. That's the whole thing.
I agree with Ashley, because you read specifically, actually, when I highlighted this, that was what I highlighted. And the fact, you can see, I'll show you, I highlighted
I
that.
believe you can say
And the
you
fact
highlighted
that you specifically read that in is what you're telling us, based on all the documents you gave us, that you don't care about anything within the 100-foot buffer zone other than the area that's within 50 feet. That's what your documents say. Read the document.
No, it does not.
That is a gross misrepresentation
No,
of what the plan
that-
is. And we'll have a chance to go through the plan.
Well-
But there was an extensive amount of effort put into the design of this plan so that there would be no adverse impact on the wetlands. And I would like the opportunity to have Mr. Lord go through that, and then if you still have that opinion, we can discuss it at the conclusion of his presentation. But that is not at all our intention, and that is not what the design intent was.
You say repeatedly that the only areas you're concerned of in here are those located within 50 feet of the wetland boundary.
Okay. Sure.
If I can, Mr. Chairman, if you look at my report, there are two sections. The individual units that listed in my report came from the commission at the conclusion of the last public hearing session. We also, after the first of the year, met with town staff. We were given a listing of the units that the commission and town staff had concerns with. What I started to present in this document is the fact that there are activities within the first 50 feet out from the edge of the wetland. Those are the areas that have the highest likelihood for adverse impact to the physical characteristics of the wetlands and watercourses. That's the beginning of my report. I also talk about those units which the commission listed by building, which had more than 50% of the building within the 100-foot zone.
Right.
That's in my report.
Those are the units.
I do not
identified.
eliminate those. I talk about them. And we have started to focus in my report on those activities which had the highest comments back, frankly, from my point of view, from the commission. Those are the ones we started with. Okay. After the beginning of the year meeting with town staff, we got the listing of the units that were of concern to both the commission and to town staff. Met with the other members of the applicant's team, and we began to look at individual lots. I keep saying lots, individual unit numbers that were on that list. We went unit by unit and looked at what we could do that would, in our opinion, provide a level of impact that is commensurate with the wetland resource that is associated closest to that unit. And that is the crux of what I was trying to get at in reading that paragraph. The only point I was making there is, and there is a number of court precedents that are readily available to anyone, that decisions made within the wetland can be exclusionary because they are within wetlands. Within the upland review zone, they are discretionary. They have to be based on some viable and environmental effect that those activities are going to have on the associated wetland or watercourse resource. That's the point that I was trying to make with that particular paragraph. It's not enough to just say it's within 50 feet, it's within 100 feet. You regulate within that, but regulate is not the same as what your authority allows you to do within the wetland limits. That's the point I was trying to make.
Okay.
Okay? You've heard, and I'll, again, just for the record, we have 5 direct impacts to the on-site wetlands. We have a expansion of an existing access point off of Fowler Road. We are looking to increase the size of the existing culvert to provide access off of Fowler Road to the project. We have a second existing crossing, which we are proposing to widen and enlarge the opening through the trolley bed crossing in this area of the site. The third permanent activity, direct impact to wetlands, is located in this portion of the site where the access road off of Route 22, Notch Hill Road, comes into the site and bends to the north. We have a tip area of wetland that we are proposing to fill for the construction of the access road. The project will then have two means of egress and ingress off of town roads. It's a matter of health and safety concerns that a project of this size, with this many units, with this much road, should have two means of access to the project itself. The other two activities, as I briefly described, we have a temporary crossing of a wetland watercourse at this point on the project site for connection of the sanitary sewer line, and we have a larger, wider crossing to provide connection for the on-site sewers to an existing, pardon me if I use the wrong term, trunk line alongside of the brook in this wetland and watercourse. Those two temporary disturbance activities will be done in a sequence where excavation for the pipe will remove topsoil layer, put it to one side of the trench. The subsoil materials down to proposed grades would be separately stockpiled on the other side of the trench. After installation of the sewer line, backfill will be, the subsoil material will be backfilled into the trench line. At the appropriate depth, the topsoil layer from the trench excavation would then be placed in and compacted to a point where it's the same elevation. There's no bump or depression along the trench line with the wetlands either side of the proposed trench. It would then be vegetatively stabilized, and the area would be allowed to regrow through natural successional growth to its ultimate character. As far as the individual units are, the first unit that I will talk about is Unit 6. This is a, I'll get the right drawing.
Can I ask a question? The last meeting we were here, you gave us drawings dated January 20th, which I have gone through in depth. And tonight we come in and we have, stamped January 16th. And tonight we come in and I have drawings that are dated February 4th. I already marked up in depth and gone through this one dated, stamped January 16th in depth. Are we talking about, when we look at this, so I'm not looking at the wrong things, are there changes in the one
Yes.
stamped the 4th versus the 16th that I need to be concerned about, or is this just redundant?
No, there's changes.
For the record, I'm Mike Ott. I'm a licensed professional engineer and land surveyor with Summerhill Civil Engineers and Land Surveyors in Madison. We've, for this new application, Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong, we've only
Excuse me,
submitted.
Mike, I can't hear a word you're saying.
Just talk up a little
Oh,
bit.
I'm
louder.
sorry, Jerry. For
I
this.
could hear much better when the discussion was heated.
You want, we can, you want to yell at each other? I'll try to talk louder.
No, we don't.
Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong. For this new application, we've only submitted one set of permit drawings. We haven't made any revisions since we submitted them for this application.
So.
Is that correct, Carrie?
So I don't know.
That's a little off. So the original ones were submitted at the meeting that, our last meeting. They were actually at their desk because you had submitted them. But we were waiting for the stormwater report, landscaping to be added. I think that was it. Just the landscaping plans.
It should,
But
yeah.
the only, one page I know that may be different is if you flip to your original one, Frank, go to page 9.
Yep, page 9, lot number,
Is there so these
12?
plans do not have a detention basin at the end of the cul-de-sac, and there is one now. So you both can look at this.
But in terms of the
no,
lot.
lot number 12 is different too.
Okay, but I'm just saying that was one indication that this plan, the ones stamped February 4th, have been revised.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about, the February 4th one.
Okay.
So there's this here, and then what'd you say?
So I think
Steve?
they'll go through the changes, but the point is that the February 4th set of documents are changed from the original ones submitted for this application.
We're talking about this application only, Carrie?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I
Because
didn't
remember
remember that.
Remember the
Yeah.
last time they didn't have the landscaping in it?
Okay, I'm sorry, I apologize, I didn't remember that.
Yeah, it was
That's
Jan
okay.
16th.
Yeah, when the dates you're using must be your received dates. Your
Yeah.
received stamp,
Yes.
because the plans are dated January 1st, 2020, I believe. Right?
The cover of both of them say January 2020, but in this one that was received February 4th versus the one that was on our desk received January 16th, there are some changes.
But also on the January 2020 stamped February 4th, Mike, you had added the revised February 1st miscellaneous.
Right.
So that is the most current updated one.
Yes, I apologize, I've forgotten about the initial without
That's
the
okay.
landscape.
Yeah,
plan,
that's
so-
fine.
Yeah, so
So-
do you, now I'm a little confused, do you have the correct set of drawings?
Yeah,
We
but-
have
but
the
the-
newest ones
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
are
but the problem is, as we stated the last meeting, I spent a lot of time on the one we got at the last meeting. Then I come into the meeting tonight,
We
get
have a new-
another one that I haven't had a chance to look at.
But-
And I find that upsetting to me.
But, Mr. Chairman, to be fair, we submitted, Carrie, could you please tell us when we submitted the last revised set
It
of drawings?
says it was submitted
February
before,
4th.
and we got them tonight.
Well, it's not, I'm sorry you got them tonight, but that's not our,
Right,
we
so.
don't
Yeah.
give them to
So
you.
I didn't mail out,
Yeah, I
I mailed
understand.
Jerry has them, but I didn't mail these large plans to,
No, that's
Yeah,
not, there's
So
also
I'm just-
one house that's changed.
I just wanna know when we go through this, I'm gonna refer to the one that I've marked up. So I need to know, when you give your presentation, if there's any
Yeah.
significant changes from the one I marked up versus the one that we got tonight.
There isn't, there aren't.
So I'm not gonna refer to this one, I'm gonna
Yeah.
refer to this.
But yes, but could I, just to be clear, we submitted the set of drawings to the town hall, you must have stamped them received
Right.
February 4th. Today's February 26th. So I'm sorry you just got them tonight, but we didn't do that.
And I understand.
apologize. I'm sorry.
I don't mean to give you a hard
And
time.
I'm not trying to put it on Carrie either, but that's just the facts.
But it's hard when you get all these different changes from, I come in here with the understanding that when we talked the last time, when we were here, I walked out of that meeting with the understanding from you that everything we got was final, that there were some other documents that had to be provided, but they were independent of this. And then we come in here tonight, we get another soil resource report that was changed, get another document here. It's frustrating. So you have to understand our point of view, because we do spend time on this. This isn't something where we just walk in and without doing homework.
Understood, right, but you do recognize that we.
Yes.
That it
You
was
got
in
it
you.
3
Yeah,
weeks
you-
Yes,
you
I understand
submitted
it, so I'm just,
Okay.
but I just not asking, I just wanna know what's the difference, that's all I ask. What's the difference?
When I believe it's just the landscape plans, but when I present, I will explain the best I can.
All right.
Yeah.
I think it's also the detention basins, but.
It could be,
you
I'm
can-
not sure, I'll have to look at that, I can't.
Yeah, this is this one here. Okay. Do you wanna continue, please?
Yeah, yeah.
Units 6, 7, and 8 were on the list that we looked at. The basis starts with the fact that these 3 units are presently 25 to 40 feet from the closest wetland edge, which is shown in the shaded area proposed for filling in that part of the site. The creation and installation of the access roadway in its present characterization location would result in those houses, while the house location does not change, the wetland does change to be more than 60 feet away from the closest wetland edge after the construction of the roadway. Now, Mike can support me in this. This configuration was not just picked at random. This is based on sound engineering criteria and the curvature of the road that allows us to bend a road in this curvature and not bend it in a different or sharper manner. The point I'm getting to is the fact that the road goes in and results in the houses being further away. We did not do this filling to make the houses be further away. It was the roadway that we needed to construct to get into the site that resulted in that change.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Sorry, Joe, I have to put you down for a sec. You're saying that this curve is the way it was constructed, so that's a gentle sloping curve. Couldn't this be moved over here to avoid the wetlands altogether?
That's an engineering question I can't answer.
That's what I had asked originally, because it was based upon all the other houses that you had designed down here, but if the road was moved over, it would have just as much of a curve and avoid the wetlands.
Sure.
So the road, the intersection of the road with State Route 22 has to meet certain safety standards, and mainly in this particular case, the thing that's driving the location of the intersection is intersection site distance, the distance that people in a vehicle exiting and turning and entering the main road, Route 22, can see left and right for the speed of the road, for the design speed of that road. So that's why that road is right at the crest. There's a crest in Route 22, and the intersection is right at the crest, and it's the only place where safe, adequate intersection site distance in both directions is provided. So that point is fixed. Then there are roadway design standards. The town, like all municipalities, has roadway design standards regarding horizontal curves in roads and not having reverse curves, curving one way and then curving the other way.
I wasn't saying to curve one way and then the other. I was
Right.
saying move the
No.
entrance over another 20 feet and go in.
That's,
And up.
let me explain again. That's what I'm trying to,
I
I'll try to
understood-
be
I understood
clear.
what you were
Yeah,
saying
so
about
we can't-
sightlines.
Yeah, we can't move it over
Except
to
there's
the right.
already driveways on both sides of your box right there, and they're able to move in and out.
This is, these standards are for roadway, not a driveway. The standards are different.
So do you have,
And those are,
do you have the information on that?
on,
The study that you did about the roadway?
about intersection site distance?
Mhm.
There's an intersection site distance demonstration plan in the drawing set.
No, that it cannot be moved over 20 more feet to the right or south.
We didn't, in writing, in a report or anything, make that statement. We've proposed it in accordance with engineering's practice at the right place, and then we provided the intersection site distance demonstration plan. And the town engineer has reviewed it, and he's aware of the position of that intersection, that it has to be right at the crest at that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Carrie, can we get an update from Kurt
Okay.
on that? Thanks.
It'd be nice to know.
So you're looking for an update from Kurt saying that he concurs?
Saying that that cannot be moved.
Okay.
Yeah, because I would think that there should have been a study done looking at the various locations.
Mhm.
So there should be a study, data that shows why you can't put it there.
So there was a study done, Mr. Chairman, but I think I can safely say that it's standard practice. It is not standard practice to do a report about the different locations of that roadway. I think I could safely and fairly say that it's standard practice for an engineer to go out in the field and evaluate the location and find the best safe location, and then show that on the plans, and then do that demonstration plan so that the State Department of Transportation can review it as well as the town engineer.
But
So
is
that's what we did.
But as Ashley pointed out, since this is impacting the wetlands, so her request is, can you take and reevaluate this, moving it over 20 feet, to see if the rules of the road still hold?
I've already done that evaluation, and I can tell you for the record, we cannot move it.
So can we get the data and the report that shows that you've done that you cannot move it?
In order to do that, I'd have to do another sightline demonstration plan for the location moved over 20 feet that will show that we have inadequate sight distance. We can do that.
But you just said that you did do that.
No,
And you're
I-
saying that you don't wanna do a back and forth, right? So it still couldn't go like this,
No. Let me.
to have the same exit?
It cannot. Can I answer the chairman's question? What I said, Mr. Chairman, was we did the evaluation to find the safe place for that intersection. If you'd like us to, and then we did a sightline demonstration plan that shows that it's safe, standard of practice.
Okay.
If you'd like us to demonstrate that we can't move it over, we would do another sightline demonstration plan with the intersection moved over that will show, I know it will show because I've done the initial evaluation, that we would not have adequate intersection sight distance. Be glad to do that if you'd like that. I want to make sure you understand that it's, what we've done is the standard of practice. Typically, you won't see multiple intersection locations and multiple intersection sight distance demonstration
I
plans.
understand.
Okay, but still, it could not be curved more right from the start?
No, I don't think so, because once the intersection is set, then the town, as I was explaining, the town, like all municipalities, has roadway design standards, and we have to enter at a 90-degree angle.
Okay.
And to meet the roadway curvature standards, that actually is the minimum, that actually meets the minimum Town of North Branford roadway design standards. That section of road, that first 500 feet or so.
But this will be a private road. I mean, we're kind of getting into planning and zoning stuff, but
It's a private road network, but it makes sense from an engineering standpoint, from a public safety standpoint, and we discussed with the town engineer to design the roadway network in accordance with not only the town's road standards, but standards of practice for roadway design. Those roads are designed just like any residential or industrial subdivision roadways would be designed. That the town would ultimately be offered for acceptance, and the town would ultimately take as a public improvement. That's not the case here, but that's how they're designed.
Okay. Do you have anything else? Yeah.
Do you have anything, Jared?
You know, I'm trying to put this all together, hearing every other word more or less. You're talking about moving the entrance kind of southeast in order to get, I'm assuming it was to get one of the homes further away from the wetlands, is that correct?
No, it was to move the road out of the wetlands.
To move the road out of the wetlands. Oh, I see what you're saying. Instead of filling that small portion.
Correct.
Okay, all right, I see what you're saying. Thanks. And could Mike speak up a little bit more?
I'll try.
Thank you.
In looking at units 6, 7, and 8, with the more than 60 foot of separation distance that is provided with this particular roadway configuration, another important design element that needs to be part of the evaluation is that runoff from these 3 units, and the impervious surfaces which drain to the roadway are fed into part of the water quality measures, the treatment, the catch basins, and the water quality discharge point, which is up in this portion of the site. That's an additional layer of protection between the proposed houses and the closest wetland area. What we have proposed is the placement of marker posts, back up. What we have proposed is a relatively standard, there's a few exceptions, but a relatively standard rear yard configuration for all of these units of 20 feet out from the rear of the building structure. That's the limit of rear yard that will be maintained as grass. What we have done to augment that and define it visually and structurally is we have proposed additional plantings of trees and shrubs at that 20-foot distance, in addition to the sign marker posts that would define these areas as protected zones out from the rear of the structures. And again, it's my professional opinion that this level of protection measures that are present and currently included on the site plans provide more than an adequate level of protection to the associated wetland resource and will not likely result in any kind of an adverse effect to the physical characteristics and functioning of that wetland area.
So can I ask a question? In
Sure.
your document, you say Unit 6, marker signposts are proposed to be set at the limit of the sediment filter fencing associated with this lot. Where is the sediment fence? It doesn't say 20 feet, it says sediment fence. Unit 7, it says 25 feet, Unit 8 says 20 foot.
Yes, I said that 20 foot is sort of a standard, but there are exceptions.
So where is the sediment fence?
Lot 7 is different in that you have some curvature of the 100-foot upland review zone at the back of 6. It's tighter.
Fence?
The sediment filter fence is farther back and allows for a 25-foot rear yard area on building 7.
I think the sediment filter, I think this is the sediment fence. Because the house is here.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard for me to see on
So,
that,
so
that
lot,
drawing.
so
Yes.
unit six, the sediment fence, you know, I really like to see that distance defined other than the limit of the sediment fence. You know,
Well, that's the purpose of the plantings and the markers
Okay.
that define the 20-foot.
So just to compare, I think this is correct. So
Is this
the
20 feet?
distance between the rear of Unit 6 and the sediment fence is the closest to the unit, or even the same distance as it is to 7 and 8.
Look,
So-
eight looks, to me, he's
and-
got 20 feet and that looks closer to me.
So, and then these notes here that I've highlighted say 20 feet, right, for Unit 8, 20 feet rear yard and 25-foot rear yard.
All right, so that's different than.
My comment on all of these notes regarding the rear yard is that it says a 20 or 25-foot minimum. I think it should actually say maximum.
Yeah, it should say maximum.
Okay.
Yeah. Because that's
That's the
the
intent,
purpose of
right.
that and the intent of that
So
is to
then-
set the limit. Because in the previous discussions we've had there was no depiction or description or anything as far as what the rear yards for the back end of each unit was going to be. So this was our initial attempt at designating by unit where there's activities closest to the wetlands to define the backyard areas and further make them readily apparent by the plantings and signpostings.
Carrie, if that's the sediment fence, where is I know this inward wetlands boundary, but I know there was one on the backside as well.
Say that again?
So the inner wetlands is right here.
Mhm.
Where was the backside? Because this
Here.
crossed both the front
It's
and the
right
back.
Here, here's the wetland, back
Okay.
here.
Yeah, and this is
See these flags?
this is the 100-foot line
Okay.
off of that wetland.
And then this is the side.
There's
So the dotted line is, okay. All right,
Yes, 100 foot.
yep, all right, thank you.
So for example, what we're looking to do with those marker posts and the plantings is for the lots to set the sediment filter fence at the limits of the yard, so that during construction, the construction activity doesn't go beyond that. So that the 20 to 25-foot rear yards for each of those lots, there's a sediment filter fence, which is gonna act as the construction
Okay.
for those units.
And then you say you're gonna put marker signs, but you don't define the marker signs. So what are the marker signs? There's
Standard ones that say wetland,
wetlands.
upland,
Okay,
review zone.
that's what I assumed, but I didn't wanna assume.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And then, what about, and, because this permeates all the other lots you have in this document. What about the application of herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizers? Are there gonna be markers out there too that say that they should not be applied on the lawns there?
So we have the same language that we talked about at the last hearing, where the pesticides will not be stored and not be used in the wetland area. Any activity that occurs within the 100-foot upland review zone will specifically have to be approved by this commission, so yes.
Okay, and.
So, sorry, along those lines, before you shift gears, that was one other document that I had in my pile from the first application. Is it okay to include that in
I
this
thought I gave it to you at the
application?
hearing that we had before this one, but yes, if not, yes.
Okay, so I'm going to just have that as Exhibit 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll double check.
And to go back to what we discussed the last time on that, just to refresh my memory, the lots are gonna be maintained by a homeowners association.
Association, yeah.
And whoever does the homeowners association will have it imprinted on their mind that they can't do this, right? There's gonna be a way of
Well, I didn't-
warranting that they're not gonna do this, right?
It will be in the association documents, you know. I presume the comment was somewhat hyperbole. I mean, I don't know about the imprintation on the mind, but yes, it will be made, the contractor will be made aware.
Okay.
If no further
Yeah.
discussion on these units, we'll move to unit number 9, which is the next one on the commission's list. The house location, or the unit location right in this portion of the site is currently shown approximately 45 feet from the edge, closest edge of the wetland boundary. It's at west of roadway station 9+00 on Road A. The wetland that's associated with this area shown on the drawing consists of a somewhat well-defined swale area that is approximately 24 feet wide. On the sidewalk, for those of you that walked down last fall, you saw very little visible difference, grade change difference at all from the uplands to the wetland in this area. The wetland narrows down considerably from a delineation standpoint. It's much wider to the south, a little wider to the north, but in this particular location is very limited, very narrow. The proposed house location is in the mature woods, very little shrub understory, very little ground cover. There is a very thick leaf duff material on the surface, partially decomposed leaf material in last year's leaf drop. On the western side of that, several of the units along Frederick Frederick Street, have access onto the property. There's storage of some lawn debris and other materials on this portion of the site over here. It's on the site on the opposite side of that water wetland resource.
Hold on a second. Are we losing Jerry? I'm a little concerned that we're,
Jer, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
He's there.
okay.
He's just not
That's
showing
me.
his face, he's showing the ceiling.
Okay.
Well, I need to hold the phone up to my ear in order to hear this.
So he's holding it up to his
So-
ear to hear.
Thank you. for
Okay,
that.
are you hearing me okay, or do I need to talk louder? Commissioner?
He can hear you.
You can hear me, okay. I couldn't hear him.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
That's right. For this unit, again, we looked at the resource that was closest in association to Unit 9. We made the determination that we would propose the sign markers at the back edge of a 20-foot limit for rear yard area. You see on this drawing the proposed plantings, which will further demarcate the limit of that rear yard area for unit number 9. We believe that that is an adequate level of protection considering the wetland resource that we are closestly associated to.
So that silt fence is how many feet away from the actual wetland?
Would be 25 feet if my math is
That's
correct.
25 feet? That's a lot closer than 25 feet. If this is 25 feet over here,
Is this the silt fence?
this is a lot closer.
Okay, well, I measured it with the scale and it was 20 feet.
That's still closer than
25
this.
feet.
This is what you said is 20 feet, and this is what you say is 25 feet. That's a
Okay.
whole lot closer. That
We
distance.
will double check the calculations, but.
Because otherwise, this would have to be shored up quite a bit.
Here,
Do we have a-
okay.
Yep, just have to show me which one.
Unit 9.
Unit 9. The silt fence to the actual wetlands, can I go back one page?
Sure.
Unless these scales are different.
No.
Okay, so this was told to us that this was 25 feet and this was 20 feet. If this is 20 feet and this is 25 feet, there's no way, there's 9. I lost 9.
Right.
There's no way that this silt fence to this
Oh.
is 20 feet.
I think it's not, I can tell the way.
It's not.
I think it.
This is 40
The
feet to
diff-
the wetlands, so.
It's the original distance from the corner. The actual distance for the backyard or the rear yard is inside of the silt fence.
So this silt fence needs to be shored up to this marker then. If we're going to be
Yes.
approving any of these, this can't
We
be
could-
this close to the
We can do
wetlands.
that.
Would you like me to scale a distance, or do you not, are you okay?
No, no, I'm seeing the original one, which is this line right
Well,
here.
don't go away, because I have an engineering question.
Right, because that's the original one right there.
Yep. Yeah, that would be the, yes, we would need to reconfigure that.
Yes, so you need to move this back.
So, an engineering question. It says in this revised, document, revised soil document here, it says, for Unit 9, it says, the house orientation with the roadway was rotated 90 degrees from its original location to increase the separation distance. What does that mean to me in relationship to the drawings that I'm looking at?
This is, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, this is unit.
So this
You're talking
Unit
about-
9,
Yeah,
it
that's
says,
a-
the house orientation was, with the roadway was rotated 90 degrees from its original location to increase the separation distance, but I I don't understand that.
I think that might be a mistake, that particular house was not rotated 90 degrees. Unit 12 was rotated.
Unit 12 was, and that's the one that was
Unit 12
changed.
was rotated, I do recall rotated.
Okay, so
It's
could,
just a mistake.
So
Was
could
there
we
an
get-
intention to?
Yeah.
Could it be or not?
I certainly could look at it.
then we need to have that removed,
Yeah.
Or rotate it?
or rotate the house. if you rotate the house 90 degrees, it's gonna be,
We'll get you
Further
an
from
answer
the
on
wetlands.
that.
for, oh, 90, yeah, but how do you rotate it?
So if there's a
90
way
degrees.
to, if they could,
Right,
I
if
don't
they
know.
can take it and put it this way.
yeah,
Yeah, you're gonna put the house sideways.
Yeah.
yeah, but at least,
I-
but then the model might change, maybe
Yeah.
use a different model.
I'd be glad to look at rotating unit 9. Glad to look at it. I'll take a look at it.
Well, I'm just reporting what your document that you submitted as experts say you're doing.
Understood. I think it's just a.
It's on page 4, under unit 9, it's it's the one dated February 3rd.
Right, what paragraph?
It's the unit 9, second sentence, the house orientation with the roadway was rotated 90 degrees.
It looks like the same orientation as every other house to me.
It
Right.
is, that's
Yes,
a
it
mistake
is.
in the
There's a-
writing.
There's a difference between my report and the drawing. We will rectify that in one direction or another.
There's also a mention of boulders in the report,
Right.
Oh, yes, I did mention the
but then they're not, I think they're only shown on the plan by unit 12.
yes, this is the, Unit 9 is a candidate for that, for the placement of the boulder. Because
Okay.
of the proximity to the wetland. We will change the drawing accordingly to include those.
That and shore up the fencing.
Yes.
What, I was thinking about all these boulders in so many places. I mean, did anybody consider some form of permanent fencing that could be maintained by the association? Some low-level fencing that doesn't obstruct views and yet acts as a physical barrier?
Did you hear him?
I heard him, I'll go out on a limb. My experience with any kind of fencing is that eventually it's going to deteriorate or can be physically more easily moved than the boulders that we are talking about. I also, my experience with the placement of boulders in this type of situation as a physical barrier, they provide a very long-lasting barrier, demarcation to the zone. This is your backyard. It's not your backyard beyond that. And they do tend to grow into, or the vegetation that's proposed to be planted around it, go around the boulders, so the boulders aren't as,
I'm convinced.
But speaking of the boulders, 30 inches is not a significant boulder.
30 to 36 inch minimum. They will in all
I think we
likelihood.
did 36 to 48 on another project.
Yeah.
36 to
36 to
48.
48.
Yeah, 30 to 36 is not gonna be picked up by, one or more people. It's gonna require a machine to pick them up, and
Okay,
then,
and you're doing plantings around these boulders as well, is that correct?
that is correct.
Okay, good, thank you.
You see the guys at the gym I go to, I bet you they can move it. No, I can't do it.
Okay. The next unit on the list is unit 24.
I'm sorry.
That's on the Stub Road. Should be on the next sheet. It is, okay. That is the unit here, where we have a section of the right in this area here where the wetland has a little bit of a wrinkle in it, and it comes further to the west. The proposed house location is currently 30 feet, shown 30 feet away from the closest wetland edge. Again, referring back to the site walk, this wetland is obviously one that was created by during the excavation, probably a past
Isn't it?
extraction area.
This is, yeah, it's all the way in the upland review, but it's 30 feet to here.
Oh, to here, okay, I got you.
The house location is significantly, by that I mean 5 to 6 feet higher in elevation than this wetland, which is obviously, and based on soil borings, a disturbed soil type wetland. The protective measures that we have chosen to put in at this point include the establishment of a maximum 20-foot limit to the rear yard area, sign marker posts, and proposed landscaping. The proposed landscape plantings will be done in accordance with the removal of invasive plant species there. What vegetation is on the rear of this unit consists of a relatively dense stand of Russian olive shrubs. Those would be cut back and controlled, and the native plant materials would be placed to the rear of that unit. That also is likely a candidate and can be added along with the previous unit for the placement of boulders to more visibly control any rear yard area to the rear of unit 24.
You said this one is approximately 5 feet
Higher in
elevated from the
elevation.
wetlands. Can I ask again, going back to unit number 9, about how high is that one compared to the wetlands?
Are these the
I would have to
elevation
do
markers
those.
here? Are these the elevation markers here next to it?
Well, so it has first floor elevation 104.
Show me, Carrie, I'll tell you. Unit 9, that's unit 9.
Yeah.
Just because I need a microscope to look at this and I can't read it on this, so.
Yeah, I can see.
I've just been told that the floor elevation for unit 9 is 12 feet higher
12 feet? Okay.
than the associated wetland strip
Yeah,
there.
that's right,
The
based on here.
more important
see that.
element of that is that there is a stable, established slope grading down from the house location to that wetland. That's not present on lot 24.
That would be true for lot 10 too.
Did you, I'm sorry, Dave, did you answer? We haven't answered you.
Yeah.
He said 12 feet.
It's about 12 feet?
The first floor elevation is 104 round numbers, and the elevation at the wetland boundary is 90, right behind that.
Okay, so 14. That's it.
Okay.
Okay.
And that would hold true for unit 10 too.
Probably.
Because it says the first floor elevation is 103.7 for unit
I
10.
can't see that.
Moving on to units 29 and 30. These are the units at the,
These are the ones on
oh,
this. Right on the slope.
these are the units that are on either side of the.
Wait, what, Jer? You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, because you were going.
I wonder why that's so poor connection.
Phone still charging? Sometimes that
No, we
happens with
can't
the
hear you.
batteries.
You're getting funky. Hang on one second.
Battery.
I don't know. I can't tell.
Yeah.
Is that better?
You picture, I see you.
Hmm.
Yeah. Right back
Is that
at
better? Okay. I'll leave this open. I'll just leave it open so it keeps going.
What unit
You know, I
are we
didn't
on
sign
again?
up to
21.
babysit Jerry.
Yeah, well, thank you. You know, just put it on my tab.
Are we back on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go.
He's not
These-
vibrating anymore.
These units are on either side of the eastern side of the trolley crossing area.
This is the steep slope.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This is the steep slope.
This is the steep slope that we walked down when we first started the site walk, for those of you that were in attendance at that. The changes that we've made here, we have moved and turned the units into duplex units. The closest edge of the units are now approximately 60 feet from the closest wetland edge.
Both of them, or just the one on number,
29.
29.
30 there.
because
We
30
did that
looks
on
like it's
either
closer
side.
than 60 feet.
Yeah, we did it on either side of the, my report says just for unit 29 to unit 31, the duplex, but
Right,
the
but,
dimensions, it moved both sides of the roadway, the units there into duplexes, then moved them further to the east. In addition to the increase in the separation distance, as we've had before, we have erosion control blankets to stabilize these slopes. We have native plant materials placed on the slope to stabilize the slopes, and the placement of markers, signposts along the top edge of those proposed fill slopes to more physically demarcate the limit of.
right, but what's being
Side
done for the runoff here? Because that was our biggest concern with these two units, is because it's on such the steep slope, and because it directly impacts the wetlands,
Mhm.
what's being done to control the runoff?
Okay, the site runoff from those units flows to the roadway. Down the driveway, is not discharged directly to the proposed slopes. Also, the slopes are being covered with erosion control blankets, which provide immediate stabilization to enhance the revegetation efforts on those slopes. So those slopes are not intended to transport site-generated stormwater runoff. That flow is moving in either a northerly direction or a southerly direction to the roadway system.
Okay, so unit 30 is completely within the 100 upland. 29 is better than what it was originally, but 30 still is. So what is the actual distance?
So we just measure that, it's 60 feet.
For
from-
29 or for 30?
For 30,
Yep,
and 90 feet for 29,
okay,
to the wetlands,
all right.
from the
thank you.
building.
And then there's this slope in between
And then
both.
there's the slope, which is the tough
So
part.
is there a backyard behind, on 30 and 32?
There'd be no side yard, because that's the slope.
Right, I see that.
No.
but the
There's no
would
backyard
be
to
on the
29.
On the north side?
There's no backyard to 29, because that's the slope as well. 30 would be very minimal, because there's
Yeah,
the
it'd be
slope over
limited.
here
It'd be
too.
limited.
Well, I'm asking about 30 and 32,
Okay,
the two parts of the duplex.
Well,
So-
32 would have a backyard.
Jerry wants to know what the backyard would be looking like for 30 and 29.
Well, there will be, you've got room there for a minimal backyard for,
For 30 maybe, but not for 29.
yeah, no, I'm not addressing 29
Okay.
yet. No, there's nothing on 29.
Yeah, 30 would be minimal. It wouldn't impact anything.
So if you look at this plan,
It's
the
right here.
landscaping plan, right?
Okay. So really for
Yeah, it's nothing.
29 and 31 have no yard at all.
Correct.
Yeah, 29 and 31 really are no yard at all.
Those units are designed to have walkout basements, so there's no need for grade change.
29 and, which units?
29 and 31.
Yeah, the units, numbers,
Yeah,
29 and 30.
yeah, but there's no
There's
real
no backyard, it's all
backyard
slope.
there.
Right, it's
a
very
slope.
low.
So
Nothing.
Is this area has all been filled, because the original trolley line was not, it was a gentle slope down to where we crossed.
Yeah, 'cause it's gonna be
And this is a
raised.
huge slope, so how much of this is fill, and how stable is it to build upon without erosion of that backyard or side yard collapsing?
Well, he said he was gonna put down,
Yeah, I know, the blankets and all that kind of stuff, but any kind of retaining wall?
No, we're proposing graded slopes and vegetative stabilization.
Because I don't know how stable that hill is.
Well, the house will be above, the house will be above
These
the,
are the ones
Right.
impregnated with vegetation, they grow, right?
Are the erosion
correct?
control blankets the ones impregnated with vegetation, is what Jerry's asking?
These are the blankets that actually grow vegetation, is that correct?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so, yeah, they're using those on the top of Snakeville Road for token, right, and they stabilize very, very quickly. Providing that, I mean, you can see evidence right along Route 80 opposite Big Y and the rest of the straightaway there, that where the erosion control blankets were successful, the hill is protected, but where they
Where they're not, where they failed, correct.
there has been erosion.
There has been.
yeah, but he's proposing other plantings there, I thought.
Yes, but do you remember the steepness of that slope? And this is all fill. This
Yeah,
is
but
not,
the houses there are not gonna be on fill, they're the original grade, right?
no, it's not
No,
original
no, that's
grade.
not right,
Jerry,
Frank.
it's not, I mean, Frank, it's not original grade, that's all
That
fill.
whole area from 29 and 30 going eastward into the rest of the development, that whole area was raised somewhere around 18 to 20 feet. As the mine, that's the area where we actually did excavations when we were looking for contamination. And that was filled tremendously.
This is, I don't know how
Fill-
stable this,
That
this
whole
is.
hillside
filled-
is filled.
By who? By, going forward it's filled, or it was filled years ago?
No, it was filled since they started the excavating the rock.
Oh, sorry. I thought that
The
was the original
original
grade.
No, it's not.
elevation of that was approximately the bed, when you go down that embankment onto the trolley bed, that was the elevation, and then going all the way to the other side of the project,
It was a
through
gentle
there,
grade.
it was a gradual grade,
But-
so that whole area is
But
filled.
when we did the site walk, I was under the impression where those homes were, I know the road is being raised, where the trolley track was.
The road is being raised
But
up
I
to
thought-
where they had put the fill.
That's fill.
Had it not been filled, there would be very little raising of the road.
I don't know.
So my concern is the stability of
I
that,
still think it's okay.
but that's my concern with the
I
slope.
don't know. I thought it was the original grade, but I thought what we saw for the site walk was the grade that the houses were gonna be on. I understood.
It is what the house is gonna be on, but that's all fill, that's not
All right, well, I
original
wouldn't- I
ground.
didn't know that.
What, can I ask, Commissioner Joyner, can you say again what your concern is?
My
Sorry.
concern is the potential erosion, and that's why I asked about the runoff plan for those two lots, or two units, because this is this is the steepest area of the entire site, right here. My concern was the runoff, and Mr. Lord said it goes down the driveway and then is collected to the roadway. But if there's nothing more than an erosion control blanket, I'm fearful that this area will, like Jerry was saying, we can see examples of the erosion control blankets that are along Route 80, and where they took, but where they didn't, it seeped under and it eroded away. And those are my concerns, because this is the steepest part, it's based on fill, it's not original ground, so it is an area that's less stable.
So, let me answer the first part about erosion on the finished slope when it's all done. So.
Talk a little
ero-
louder, you're the
erosion-
softest of everybody.
I know, I'm not, my voice isn't cut out for this. Erosion control blankets can fail. But it is the contractor's responsibility, and because of the state permit requirements to do inspections on this site, as well as more than likely the permit conditions that either your commission and or the planning and zoning commission will impose, there will be.
You know, I don't know why we should be confident in the state regulations and inspections when they did such a shoddy job along Route 8. You know, had that been in any other township in Fairfield or something, that never would have passed muster. So,
And
you
my
know,
concern-
I think it's important in this particular case that you make some kind of guarantees that that hillside will be stable.
And since the backside of 30, I think it is what, 40 feet away? Any kind of failure will go directly into the wetlands. And that would impact it because that's one of the largest parts of the wetlands that goes through. And so any failure of that will directly impact the wetlands.
So what I was trying to say is, the state permitting requirements, not the Department of Transportation, the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, are gonna require that there be erosion and sediment control inspections on this site. And it's highly likely that your commission will, with any big project like this, and so will the Planning and Zoning Commission. Erosion control blankets can fail, but they don't, we can't just assume that they're gonna fail. It's the contractor's responsibility to stabilize those, to keep the sediment control barrier at the toe of the slope maintained and operational, and establish vegetation on those slopes so that those slopes become stable. It's not unusual to have a vegetated 2-to-1 slope like that. There are other slope protection measures we could do. We could use stone riprap, but we don't feel that that's needed there, nor aesthetically do we want to do that. But it is the requirement during construction and post-construction that those slopes become stable and their vegetative surface coverage is adequate to stabilize them, and that the temporary erosion and sediment control stay in place until they're stable.
Yeah, I'm just letting you know that those are my two concerns, that
Right.
this is filled area, this is not, and because it's the steepest, any erosion goes directly into the wetlands. So you wanted my reasons for why I would turn something down based on our actual regulations, those are some of the things, okay? So I'm just letting you know my concerns on these, okay?
May I ask
Understood.
a question here? What would be done if, for instance, a portion of the erosion control blanket failed? What do you do to repair that?
The contractor would come back in, regrade the slope to the proper finished grade elevations, reinstall the erosion control blanket, and remove any sediment that would be caught at the sediment control barrier at the toe of the slope.
So then there's a chance that the second attempt will take when the first may not have. I'm just looking. I just want to hear what reparations there are should there be a failure. I mean, I think that it will probably, if the erosion control blankets do take, it's going to be fine. But just what do you do if they don't? And thank you for your answer.
Right, so just to go on the record on this and to answer you more, Ashley. Again, this is standard of practice stuff, the slope, but it's the contractor's responsibility to make sure that it becomes stable and it's maintained stable, and that those erosion, the sediment control barrier at the toe of the slope that protects the wetland, prevents sediment from entering it, has to be maintained, and that's noted on our drawings.
But
Has to stay.
That's only during construction though, right?
Oh, no.
That stays
Oh, no.
permanent?
No, not permanent, not permanent. It stays until that slope has been deemed to be stable.
Oh, okay.
That the vegetative cover's gotten thick enough and strong enough, And then you take it away, although, as you know, sometimes people forget to take it away, and you see it years later, but it should be taken away. And let me, if I could, the issue here, your concern is valid, I think, but it's not related to the fact that there's fill placed there. The construction of the buildings, that's a building code issue. You know, the construction of the buildings, the building foundations will be founded on natural soils, not on fill. So the fact that fill is there already isn't related to the potential for erosion and sedimentation in the wetlands.
So how deep are these being?
Could I, just a sec, your concern is valid, that the potential for erosion and sedimentation in the wetlands is due to the slope that we will build, that we will place around those buildings when they're done.
Well, there's already a steep slope there. So
Correct.
how much lower, how much are you digging into that slope already for these houses?
I'd have to figure it out, but I could guess, Ashley, but the truth is, until you get out there, when each building is designed and when each building permit is applied for, the contractor has to excavate down to proper adequate foundation soils. The building official comes out and inspects them, so they're all gonna vary. So I really don't know there. That we wouldn't know until test pits are done, so they know how deep they have to.
And because these
excavate.
are now duplexes, it would be twice as wide. Instead of a single unit, and now it's gonna be twice as wide.
The
'cause they're now
the overall
duplexes.
building width, correct, right.
So
they're just put
we
together.
might be seeing a step down of the units that are along that,
Yes, you probably would.
along
yeah.
this.
That section,
Right
yeah.
here.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. Again, your concern's valid, but I think the controls are in place on the drawings, and the inspection requirement will make sure that all gets done properly.
Can I ask a quick question about the silt fencing I'm having a hard time seeing the numbers. I believe it's 29, no, 30? So the fencing, sorry, Jerry, I gotta put you down. Is there a reason why it bumps out here? What's this that you're going around to build the fencing?
That is the drainage outlet, if you recall. from
Okay,
Mrs.
so instead
Dewey's
of being
property.
on the upper side of it, you're going on the lower side of it?
Oh, you have to.
Okay.
Because you have construction on the upper side.
Okay. And what's the distance between the wetland and this?
I can scale it. I keep giving away my skill.
Yeah, yeah.
No. No, it makes sense.
Where's she?
Right here.
Ashley, what are you asking?
I'm asking about the distance between the fencing and the actual wetland.
to
Okay.
25.
But in one area it goes,
Oh, at the
Yeah,
culvert,
there's a
too.
closer little peak.
So at that storm drainage outlet?
No, I know that, that's directly on the wetland, but what about this right here, where this little point is? That's the closest section.
She's talking about right there. 20 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. At the bottom of page 5, unit 4.
I think we have a,
We have
Different version.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have middle of
Oh.
page 6, unit 4.
Yeah.
Did I skip one?
No, middle
No,
of page
you're on-
6.
You're on the right one. You just, there's, because
Oh,
there's
it's a
two
different,
versions.
okay.
Because you have two versions.
My mistake.
Yeah, you're referring back to
We're
the
still
other
in-
one.
We're still talking about unit 4.
Right, unit 4.
but did you go over the other proposed development activities?
No, he missed that. He didn't talk about that. Oh, yeah, I guess so. He said sediment fencing, indicated
Oh,
feature of the following.
other proposed development activities within the 100-foot upland review zone include roadway construction, residential house construction, construction of a clubhouse facility with a pool and tennis court, sanitary sewer installation, and stormwater management measures.
So along those lines, just in the prior application, I had received this image. I just wondered if you wanted this included in this application. This just shows an example of a retaining wall.
That was
And what
supposed
it
to be
might
on the backside of the
look
tennis
like.
court.
Right.
Yes, that was, I don't see any.
That was a photograph I took.
Of
I think-
another example.
Right.
Yeah, just to try to show the commission of a retaining wall.
Mhm.
Same type of retaining wall construction, exactly the same. In proximity to an inland wetland, you can actually see that's in East Lyme.
Mhm.
You can see the town of East Lyme's
Yeah, we saw that.
wetland.
Right,
And they have
because that's
markers.
where the tennis
Right.
court corner meets the wetlands. And so are you still proposing building a retaining wall like that?
Oh,
Yeah, it
exactly,
says,
exactly like
it
that.
says in here they're gonna do that.
And
So is that
yeah.
okay to include?
Yeah, I think so. And
Okay.
this, I think I've said this, but I'll say it for the record, this applicant constructed that wall.
Right.
That was his project.
Yeah, and it
Right.
says that you were gonna do it that way. And again, under the proposed other development activities, you have the sediment filter fencing indicated for each of the following units. I guess you're talking about units below now, will service the limits of the backyard, the rear yard.
Yes.
Right.
Unit 4 is located approximately 75 feet from the closest wetland edge. This is in the area, again, for those of you that were on the site walk, that very dense, tall grass sod field area, 75 feet away from the closest wetland edge there. We are proposing a maximum 20-foot deep rear yard area for this unit. We are also proposing the signage posts and proposed landscapings shown on the landscape drawing. This wetland that is to the east of this unit is also the area, Area B, which is proposed to be enhanced with the planting of native shrub cover and the removal of existing invasives. If you do quick math, there will be 55 feet of separation distance from the farthest point of the rear yard to the closest wetland edge with this proposed layout for building Unit 4. Unit 12. Which is.
No, Frank, this is where the change is from the one that
Right,
you
yeah.
marked up versus.
Yeah,
the
that's
one.
what I wanna look at this drawing here, that's what I'm doing. I can find
Now
it.
the driveway is on the side instead of coming in
Okay, so
from
it
the
shows
side
it on-
roads.
which is different than here,
Mhm.
yeah, okay. So this one here, you moved the garage to the other
Yes.
road.
This one, the orientation of the Unit 12 has been moved. In its previous configuration, the rear of the house was very close to the edge of the water quality discharge swale. Here, reconfiguring the orientation of the house and the entrance of the driveway, we've been able to provide a reasonable backyard area for Lot 12. The proposed stormwater discharge level spreader is set more than 50 feet from the closest wetland edge. We are proposing a 20-foot deep rear yard area off of this unit in the direction of the closest wetland edge. So there is again, in my opinion, an adequate level of protective measures and separation distance for Unit 12
So
to the
where,
closest wetland edge.
where does the runoff go for Unit 12? But see, that's the problem. If the driveway's in the back, then you have more chance of oil and everything else going, if it's going, running that way. So that's why I wanna know which way it's running.
So, all the driveways for all the detached units rise from the road. They ascend
Okay.
to the garage, so runoff from the driveways goes to the road and then into the roadway drainage system.
Okay.
That's true of this house.
12 has the 20-foot deep rear yard area. It has signposts, shrub plantings, and the placement of boulders to physically demarcate the rear yard area for this unit.
And that would be prior to the runoff area, collection area?
Yes, it's on the other side of the boulders.
Okay.
Units 10, 13, 15, 17, 19, 21, and 26 are grouped together because they're physically in approximately the same orientation to the closest wetland area.
What page is that on?
It's on page 9.
9, thank you.
Those are the units in
These
this
right here.
general area of.
These and this one.
Those are the units here.
It's these right here. So it's these.
Wait, is that 9 is the old one or 9
So
is the new one?
this is, so it's
And
these
you
basically
can
here
also
and
view
here.
it on 14, page 14.
14 of the new one.
14 is the new one, thank you.
Oh, I'm using the old one.
I
so
know.
marked.
Yeah,
Okay.
because 14 shows the
These
landscape.
units are within the 100-foot upland review zone. All units are proposed to have a maximum 20-foot deep rear yard area maintained as grass lawn. The distance will be further defined and controlled by marker signs, proposed landscaping. Separation distance from the closest unit corner to the closest wetland vary from 50 to over 70 feet away, depending on the particular unit.
Sorry, I need glasses. It's killing my eyes.
Two, 58, 59.
Hang on a second, I'm still trying to find 10, 13, 15, 17, 19, 21, and 26.
Here, give her this one.
They're right here. So this is 15, 17, 19, 20, 17, 15.
Where's
and
10?
then 10 is over here. 10's right here. They're not all together because they're just,
Right.
they're grouped together because
Mhm.
they're the same, have the same characteristics.
Right.
And then 20, 20, was the other one 20, 26?
26. It was across.
Is, this one is 26. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay?
I'm okay.
Okay.
You can
Units
pass that.
58 and 59 are in the somewhat interesting location on site where the units are actually lower than the associated closest wetland edge. They are proposed to have 20-foot maximum rear yard areas defined by marker posts that will be more than 60 feet away from the closest wetland edge. There's also some plantings associated with those units shown on the landscape plan. This is the units we're talking about presently, right?
So based on this drawing, they're gonna be in relationship to the slope, right? Because this is the slope, right? This is slope, right?
Yes.
So they're gonna be at the level down
slope?
here, I'm lost.
You probably answered better than I can.
Can you ask that again?
Are they going to be at the lowest level?
Yeah, so the houses are like gonna be mostly below the grade?
Yes, if you remember on the sidewalk, when we walked towards that cul-de-sac,
Right, I
on
remember.
your right, there was a slope.
Right, I know, I remember.
And those units are going right into that slope, and the wetlands,
So
the
that's-
wetlands go top.
All right, so the drawing is showing with the houses, those houses,
Down.
the lowest of the grade will be at the bottom of the slope.
Right, down, yeah. The wetland was above, if you recall, it was way
No,
up.
hang on, Jer.
Where does he live? I get better connections when I talk to people in India, my God.
Are you back? hang on, Jer.
No, he's doing that, but that's.
Okay.
Jer.
Oh. That's not good.
Jer? Your phone is burning up right now. So hot in my hand.
That's the 6.
Can you call him back?
Yeah.
Jerry, we're gonna hang up and call you right back.
Did you get him again?
I'm gonna call him back.
How much signal do you have?
All right, last time showing anything.
Well, you know what, let's, can we do this? Because as long as you got the charger there.
Say 1%.
It's not very.
You got the charger, right? 'Cause my charger's.
Yeah, but
Because I'm getting.
it's not charging, that's probably why. Do you have a plug one that we can plug in?
Why isn't it charging?
Don't know.
Probably because we're using.
What's his telephone number? Do I need to do it by, what did you do, FaceTime? Okay, what's his? Oh. Do you, Mary, do you have his telephone number?
Do you have a plug in? Maybe one to an outlet? We don't have a. Does anybody have a cube? I don't have a cube in my office.
Do you have his telephone number?
Well, we'll keep it plugged in, so.
Oh, probably. I see what you're doing. Okay, let me just call, let's forget the face. No, you do.
Create an interesting form issue. But you get 3/4 of the way to just stop.
This discussion stopped as well.
Did you lose him, Kurt?
Yeah,
My phone wasn't charging, turns out.
yeah, her phone wasn't
Even though
keeping
it
the
was plugged
charge.
in, it wasn't charging because I think while you're using FaceTime.
Okay, we got you back. We're not gonna show your face. We don't need that. Let's see if we can get this meeting over with. I'm gonna.
All right, so you got me back on what, FaceTime?
No,
No,
it's just phone.
just on the telephone, so it's nice and loud. I think everybody can hear, because they can't see your face anyway.
That's fine, I don't need to be looking at anything, and yeah, that's great.
All right, and I got you right underneath the speaker. let's go, because it's getting late.
Okay,
Fantastic. Thanks, Frank.
You're welcome.
next, unit
Sorry.
61, 2, 3, 4, and 5. They are along the eastern and northern side of roadway D. The lots will each have a 20-foot deep rear yard area established, defined and delineated by signpost markers and the proposed plantings that are shown on the landscape plan. The distances from the closest wetland edge to the rear yard limits will be between 40 and 65 feet away on the eastern and northern side of roadway D.
Okay, so, but you're still saying that their backyard is gonna be where the silt fencing is?
Okay? Correct?
Yes.
The silt fence shows the.
So then some of them are gonna have very, very small backyards.
Well, you're talking about 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, right?
Yes.
Because
It
60
says here, all units are supposed to have 20-foot deep.
20-foot deep
Rear
rear
yard.
yard area.
So then that's beyond the silt fence area.
Maintain as grass.
Yes.
But the silt fence demarcation is important during construction, that would
Right.
have to be maintained, but
The
then,
one
But then you're gonna
benefit,
expand that beyond that for the backyard.
the one benefit of this portion of the site in these particular units are the areas outside the limit of the proposed rear yard limits, relatively flat, easier to stabilize than some of the other portions of the site.
Except that the, ones on this side slope downward towards the wetlands.
Yes, but once you move beyond the proposed slope limits, the grading is relatively flat.
And those will have.
You can see some of the underlying topography. This is a cleared portion of the site where some stockpiling has taken place of material. Those are gonna be, obviously be removed, and the establishment of the limits for these units is gonna be on relatively flat grade once you move outside of the
Right.
areas
Then the
right
slope-
around.
But
the
the
slope
slope
based
will
on the line.
continue with, yeah, the slope will continue with the backyard, so will there be restrictions on any kind of lawn applications and stuff like that?
20 feet.
Yeah,
Then
Maximum.
Herbicides, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's in the,
It's
that's
in the standard for the 100-foot upland review zone.
right, and it's in the document that just got entered into
That's
the
fine.
plan, the minutes.
Just
So we're
because
all
this one
set.
slopes down towards the wetlands.
No, there's no, the homeowners association will not put anything down.
Okay, units 81 and 82. This is a change for roadway E. We, previous incarnations had a cul-de-sac at the end of roadway E. That has been taken out in discussions with town staff. Units 81 and 82 are on the north and the south side, or I should say the south and the north side of Road E. The removal of that cul-de-sac and the reconfiguration of roadway E has pulled these houses or units farther away from the wetland. They now have very small to no portion of the building structure within the 100-foot upland review zone. Let's see if I have a distance now. I didn't include a distance in
For that one.
the report for those two units. But they are, you can see, the 100-foot upland review zone is shown in conjunction with the proposed house. There are plantings proposed, also signage markers for the limit, maximum limit of rear yard areas. And also, Commission should see that this is the rear yard area that we have talked about. I shouldn't say that. The edge area that we are proposing to regrade, because some of these areas have existing stockpiles. These are the plantings that are proposed in this area, which will be flat graded to drain in a northerly, northwesterly direction to the rear of these units. This area is very flat and will actually drain to the northwest, away from the wetland itself.
So just to note real quick about units 81 and 82, I would say that the change is an improvement for the wetlands, but removing this cul-de-sac will be a problem for planning and zoning. So just to note that.
The project
Okay.
engine, Mike, is already in
Yes.
conjunction, or in conversation with the town engineer.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
For fire.
For safety.
Right.
Fire marshal will decree whatever, and we will
And if it's
comply with it.
noted as a later phase, I think that's fine, but and you note in your documents that the units are not proposed for construction at this time.
Correct.
But we just have to figure out how to word the approval of their location, but then with planning and zoning, I just don't see them approving that because there's no turnaround at the end of that roadway.
I have seen it used in other commissions where a stipulation is made that the proposed construction of units 81 and 82 require a resubmission or at least a recheck with the Wetland Commission or commission staff before any construction can be implemented.
Okay.
Quick question, could a cul-de-sac be added and not used?
Mike,
Well,
did
that
you
was
hear
the original intent.
That was the
wasn't it?
original. The original had a cul-de-sac. This is a change.
Yes. What this
Right,
allows
right.
us to utilize some of the area that was the previous cul-de-sac, so the houses were moved more centrally along roadway E and further away from the wetlands to the south and to the north. If it needs be a hammerhead or some other type of turnaround, if necessary, could be constructed in this portion of the site at the indicated end of roadway E.
Okay.
Okay, that's, if there are no questions, they'll be
Yeah,
in.
I originally had questioned 109 and 110. I think those are the numbers. I can't see.
Oh, yes, those are, did you put up that last drawing? I did not include them in my report. Those are the units right here. That, like units that we talked about, the building first floor is actually 4+ feet below the associated wetland further to the east. There will be signage, establishment of a maximum 20-foot deep rear yard area, signage and markers, signage and plantings proposed to the rear of those units. But again, you would have to walk up gradient to get to the wetland from those units, and grading will be out westerly to the proposed roadway.
These are the ones where we talked before, where it goes up the huge slope, right? Yeah.
Right.
Oh, my eyes.
I'm not gonna say anything, I can read it. I went through and made bigger numbers, so. Okay, anything else?
Just one request for the next meeting. So behind units 58 and 59,
Wait, let me
that's
find
where
it.
we, on page 6, so units 58 and 59, that's where we lost the connection with Jerry. I was going to ask about, for the next meeting, to just have details about the grading behind those units. Will there be backyards there? I know that it slopes up, but there's just no grading lines.
No backyards, because the buildings are being pushed into the slope.
So it has a first floor elevation of 133, and then the rear, the grading that ties into the rear corner is 146.
The architecture of those units is gonna be different because they're, and you see this sometimes, that buildings are pushed into the slope.
So there's
no
zero
windows,
backyard.
There's no backyard, because there's because the wetland is right there. The wetland is up above, it's,
But the plantings, what grade will the plantings, they'll be at the existing grade? That's the landscaping plan.
the
It's
plantings
Carrie,
are
what-
up at the top of the slope.
You're talking about 58, 59?
58,
Yes.
59, okay, yep.
Back here, so,
Yep.
Yeah, the plantings are up at the top of the slope here.
You said there's no backyard?
No backyard.
No backyard,
Then
because
this
it's
needs to
into
be
the slope.
corrected too.
Virtually no backyard, I should
Yeah.
say.
Okay.
okay, I'll just,
I can draw
I'll,
a section, I will show you.
Yeah, because
Okay.
this says, just so you know, it says all units are proposed to have a 20-foot deep
Yeah, off the rear.
yard maintained by grass, so that needs to be corrected.
Yeah, it is shown 20 feet back, but functionally, it won't be a backyard because of the architecture. It's not actually going to be a backyard.
But it says it's gonna be planted with grass, so does that mean the grass won't be cut back there? Is it even reachable?
Let us clarify that.
All right.
There won't be a back exit, so there won't be a back door, because it's into the slope?
okay, that's fine.
Okay, should we open up the public comment?
Well, is there anything else?
Is there anything else you want to add?
Not by me at this point, unless there are questions.
No, we don't have any questions. Can I open it up to the public then, to ask questions? Anybody from the public would like to speak? Please make sure you state your name and address, right?
Good evening. My name is Greg Sharp. I live on Reeds Gap Road in Northford. I have a number of comments, but I had a few questions first, if that's okay.
Yes.
I wanted to just clarify in the documents that the area referenced as Wetland Resource Area C in the Functions and Values Assessment is the same as the area referenced as Impact Area 3 in the project narrative?
So wetlands area resource C is the same as what?
The Wetland Functions and Values Assessment references an area as Wetland Resource Area C, whereas in the narrative to the application, it refers to Impact Area 3, and it appears to be the same resource, but I just want to be sure that the nomenclature is clear.
I believe that's correct. Do you, yeah,
Do you know?
Ask.
right, I'd like to have the applicant answer as opposed to
That is
taking my word.
An impact area along Fowler Road.
That's in area 3, right?
Resource area A is the existing crossing which will be enlarged off of Fowler Road.
Right, so the Area C is the same as Impact Area 3 in the project narrative. That's my question.
I don't know the reference to the.
There's a document, there's a project narrative that's attached to the application, I believe.
This plan, this plan is included in the plan set, sheet number 7, and it shows what are labeled as wetland impact areas, numbers 1 through 5. And wetland, and this plan is coordinated with this narrative. And wetland impact area 3 is at this curve in the road, there's that fringe fill that we talked about, on the inside of the curve.
So that's the same as what was referred to in the other document as C.
Type C catch basin, is that what you're saying?
No.
Wetland resource area
Wetland
C.
resource.
Yes.
Yes, all right, okay, we got that one squared away. second question is David, I was curious about your comment during the discussion about opinions and so on. You mentioned that you were a professional wetland scientist. Is that the designation that you got from the Society of Wetland Scientists, the professional certification?
No,
Or were you referring to?
that's the society, no, I'm just a member.
Okay, but you were a certified soil scientist?
Correct, I am a certified.
Okay, that's fine. And for what it's worth, in the discussion about opinions and facts, I'm a former environmental lawyer, retired for 3 years, and unless the rules of evidence have changed, the opinion is not offered without the facts. In other words, even in court, a witness who's going to testify as an expert has to lay a factual foundation, or somebody has to lay a factual foundation, and then the witness offers the opinion. So, if that helps. I don't
It helps me.
Okay. I don't think anything has changed, but I haven't had a lot of time to review this, and I just want to be sure I got the information correct. The application says the site is 91.3 acres. The area of disturbance is 30-plus acres. The 100-foot upland review area to be altered is 408,000 square feet, or approximately 10 acres. Is that, I just don't know if anything has changed since the
No,
various documents.
I don't believe there's been any changes to that, correct?
Those numbers are just slightly different.
Okay.
Right, here's the question here. Total area of disturbance is 0.5.
Oh,
And then
okay.
upland area is 9.4.
Okay.
This is the current
Yes, thank you. The document that I read indicated there were 6 construction areas within 50 feet of wetland boundary.
60 units?
Six construction areas.
Construction activities, yes.
On the issue of the 50 versus 100-foot upland review, I would just point out to the commission that I gave Carrie a document from the DEP Fisheries Division that calls for a 100-foot review, and I would just note that the DEP's model regulation that's attached to your regulations calls for a 100-foot upland review. So I don't think there's any question that in Connecticut, 100-foot upland review area is the appropriate area. Then the question is, what do you do with the activities within that area? And not to get deep in the weeds, but over the last 10 or 15 years, there's been a lot of research on this and many recommendations. And what it comes down to is it depends what you're talking about.
Right.
If you're talking about renovating septic effluent and you're trying to get rid of nitrogen before it hits a stream, it's X feet. If you're worried about temperature changes in a water course, then you're looking at a canopy issue, and that would be Y feet. So it really gets down to what the issues are you're concerned about and how far back you should go. Okay. And I can provide Kerry a copy. My printer ran out of ink, so I wasn't able to print it. But the Environmental Law Institute has about a 30-page monograph on this that lays out all of the issues. And the DEP fisheries document also references some of the distinctions between what's needed for what protection. Okay. Now the primary thing I'm concerned about is the fact that this project is, at least in my experience, probably the biggest one that's come down the road for quite a while. And since 1987, our wetland statute has had a requirement that neither the commissioner nor the commissioner, if it's a DEP process, may issue a permit unless the commission or the commissioner finds that there's no feasible and prudent alternative to the filling of a wetland or a watercourse. That means that evidence has to be in the record about feasible and prudent alternatives that were considered in the development of the application, but rejected for whatever reason. Now, this application has virtually no discussion of the alternatives that were considered. Now, we heard tonight from Mr. Ott about the road alignment and so on, but this is something that really should be in the application record to say, we had to put the road in from this point because it was the highest elevation on the crown of the road up on Notch Hill, and we couldn't sweep it to the right or the left to avoid the wetland because, okay, and that's the requirement. So if the applicant can't produce that, then the application is lacking, because you have no basis on which to make a decision.
Right.
So that's my thoughts on that. The other defect that I see in the application, and this came up once before on 363 Totoka, is that the commission's determined that this is a significant activity. Your regulations under 7.6 require a list of additional documentation that must be submitted to support the application. And that's not here either. And I don't know whether it was simply an oversight, but I can tell you what for those who aren't familiar with the regs, it says the additional information shall include but shall not be limited to the following information. Terrestrial and aquatic dominant botanical species, rare species, and height, age classes, and density of vegetation. 2, the terrestrial and aquatic animal life. 3, habitat value of the wetlands and/or watercourses for all indigenous and/or migratory terrestrial and/or aquatic wildlife species. 4, depth of the water table or level of water if inundated. 5, date of field determination of these data. 6, evaluation of the probable effect of the proposed activity on the factors addressed in the biological evaluation. So this is really something that typically a wetland scientist does to give the commission the picture of, you know, are we talking about a red maple swamp that's mature, the trees are 80 feet tall and with a shrub layer of mountain laurel, and, you know, I mean, it's a detailed investigation. And then it should include a description of how the applicant will change, diminish, or enhance the ecological communities and functions of the wetlands or watercourses involved, and each alternative which would cause less or no environmental impact to the wetlands or watercourses, and a description of why each alternative considered was deemed neither feasible nor prudent. There's no, at least in the documents that I saw. E, an analysis of chemical or physical characteristics of any fill that's going to be, I don't know if fill's going to be introduced on the site or not. And F, management practices and other measures designed to mitigate the impact of the proposed activity. So now we've heard of some of the mitigation issues here. But that's, I think that's, especially for a project this big, a more comprehensive application is really called
Well,
for.
and that, though I didn't say it, and I don't want to open up another sore wound, but that's sound scientific evidence, in my opinion. That's what that
Well,
requests.
this would provide the basis for
Right.
then someone to say, based on the fact that this occurs, we conclude
Right.
that this alternative works or doesn't work. The only other thing I would say is that with respect to Area C that we've just talked about, there should be a detailed in writing explanation of the alternatives that were considered and why that little wetland has to be filled, okay? But I'd also add, and this may not seem terribly practical, but even the culverts, to the extent that the culverts are going to be extended, albeit because of regulatory issues, it seems to me that under the statute, it doesn't excuse the applicant from saying, well, we also considered, for example, removing the culvert and putting in a bridge. Now, that may be deemed not prudent because the cost would be whatever a bridge costs compared to whatever the culvert would be. But that's the sort of thing that should come forward so the commission can make the decision required by the statute. So those are my thoughts. And I know, from the applicant's perspective, I know this has been a long road and this is the second time around, but for a project of this magnitude, it seems to me that all the i's and t's ought to be dotted before the commission issues a permit. I would just add, I don't live anywhere near this. This doesn't impact me, but I am concerned, and I think it's not a major concern, although I haven't had a chance to really look at the drawings. But I want the commission to know Munger Brook flows under, I don't know where exactly it becomes the Branford River, but it flows under Notch Hill. The DEP Fisheries Division stocks the Branford River starting at Circle Drive, which is only 750 feet from Route 22. So it's pretty close to this site, and so any kind of any kind of pollution impacts to Munger Brook is going to affect that downstream resource. And it's not just Circle Road, or Circle Drive, it's Harrison Road, the condos, North Farms Park, they stock that whole section. And it would be a shame to deprive, I think it's mostly kids, from being able to fish there if something should go wrong. But my understanding from your application is that you're not very close to Munger Brook. Most of the activity is away from that.
Just to, in the zoning regulations, the town has a technical knowledge, a streambelt protection district.
Oh, okay.
Like an aquatic corridor, protection corridor. Can't remember, 100 feet? 100 feet, I don't want to misspeak, but I'm pretty sure we tried to stay out of that. I'm quite sure that we did, I'll double check.
And what, is there a drawing that shows, I don't read engineer very well. Is there a drawing that shows the extent of clearing on the site?
Yes, there are the individual, there's 5 individual 40-scale site development plans, and the sediment control barrier is coincident with the limited plan.
Oh, okay. So it's not like a color drawing that shows this is going to be clear, this remains, okay. Well, I should be able to, Carrie, you understand that, so I should be able to figure that out. Because the concept is, for a cold water fishery, you want the water to stay cold, which means at low flow in August, you don't want to have the canopy illuminated.
Not at all. I totally understand what you're saying. May I also say, just to mention, Dave, in the previous hearings, Dave just hasn't gotten to it yet, but he has spoken to, at least, I don't know if we have any related feasible alternatives.
definitely be something in writing from you folks as to the, I mean, just what you were explaining tonight about the access road. Because when I looked at the plans, I didn't think of what Ashley thought of, which was to move the point of access. My thought was to circle it further away from, avoid the wetlands by curving it around. And I recognize that might end up using the building or two. If there are any other questions, I'm happy to answer.
I don't have any questions. Thank you very much. Did you want to respond regarding Mr. Sharp's question about our regulations, 7.6E, 1 through 6, F, G, and H, regarding the data required regarding terrestrial, aquatic, dominant botanical, rare species, etc.? Did you guys want to respond to that?
Not at this time. You've asked for some additional information. I think we'll include that in the additional information that we will submit as soon as possible, and hope that it gets disseminated to the commissioners as early as possible.
All right.
Carrie,
You have-
they're picking on you.
That's
I
my
see that.
fault. I apologize. Did you want, you have a copy of the regulations, I'm assuming, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other members of the audience that wish to speak? No? All right, what do we do next?
So, not tonight, but I would just highlight that at the next meeting, one thing that was not talked about was the stormwater report and the addition of the detention ponds. I don't know if
Okay.
you want that addressed tonight, but
I'm ready, I have an hour-long presentation.
Well, why don't we do it the next time? How long would
I
it take?
just got out of the hospital,
not an hour.
please.
so that's one item, and also the open space trail system and discussion about that.
Yes, we didn't discuss.
Yeah,
the
why
process.
don't we do that for the next meeting, if you don't mind?
So the next meeting is March 25th.
25th.
I was just gonna say that. Don't want to open this can of worms, but
Has the commission given consideration to whether or not it would like to do a site walk?
I know, speaking for myself, I don't believe I need to do a site walk.
Jerry, did you FaceTime with Carrie?
Yes, I did.
Do you need another site walk?
I do not. I'm fine.
No, we know the site, and we know that we're still welcome to spot check if we need to, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's all.
Great.
Carrie, what was the other thing? The trail system, open space, and the stormwater?
And stormwater.
Okay.
Okay, so, we're gonna what?
Motion to continue
Yep.
We need a
March
motion.
I move to continue the public hearing, to the March 25th, inland wetlands regular meeting date.
Do you wanna second it, Jerry?
Yeah, I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is old business cease and desist at 1071 Middletown Ave for illegal filling and dumping of material within the 100-foot upland inland review area of wetlands. It's dark in here all of a sudden. Yeah, this is my bed. Well. Can you please state your name, please?
Good evening, my name is Mike Bennett. I'm a professional land surveyor in the state of Connecticut and a principal with Bennett and Smilis Associates, Inc., 415 Killingworth Road, Higginham, Connecticut. First of all, I have some updated plans I'd like to hand out to the commission.
Thank you. Sorry that you can't see this, Jer.
That's all right. or?
No, this is
Legal representation?
it's a professional land surveyor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I'll try to be loud enough so Jerry can hear me there.
Thank you.
Usually pretty good at that. I'm here really to just give you an update and on what's happening with this enforcement order. First of all, we were asked to have a soil scientist delineate the wetlands. That was done last Wednesday. Robert Russo, a certified soil scientist, delineated the wetlands. And what you see here on the plan that I have, I've colored in green the wetland. I'm showing the limits of it here, and we also added some dimensions from the edge of the wetlands to the existing paved parking area. That has been added to the plan. As you can see, on the east side, it varies from approximately 50 feet away from the paved parking area. Then it goes toward the southeast corner of the paved parking area, and then it runs along the back of the paved parking area. This paved area, to the best of my knowledge, has been in there for forever. I believe the building was built in the 70s. It was part of it was previously a bus garage before my client purchased the property.
Right.
And what you see around it is really the way it's been since he purchased it. They have been working on, you see some piles outlined on this plan, and they were piles that were located on January 20, in the middle of January. The date of that original plan was January 21st. And my client has, if you look at the pile that calls stump pile, there was also some demolition materials in there. They have moved that. They are removing the stumps from that pile as much as they can. They've had some issues with where they're taking the stumps to. On rainy days and very wet days, they can't get the trucks in the road, so it's taken them longer. They had intended to be finished with that by the time we came to this meeting, but they aren't quite there yet. I have a series of photographs that will give you a little bit of the progress that's going on the site. These pictures, there's 4 pictures they were taking either today or last Friday when our survey crew went out to locate the edge of the wetlands.
Thank you. This is not all the material that's there, though.
Pardon?
I just drove by this, and this is not all the material that's still left. There's more.
Yes. Yes. First of all, what I'd like to show you, the first picture on the top is the stump pile. That is, I'm sorry, the wood chip pile that is in this area. You can see what they've done is it was spread out more. They pushed it into a pile. What they do with the wood chips here is they stockpile them, and then pile gets big enough, they have a trucking company that comes in and hauls them away, and they are sold for either a company that makes mulch, or they are sold to either another company that burns them as fuel. And if you look at our plan, you'll see the wood chip is going all the way out here further into the parking lot. Basically, this portion of it has been pushed.
Now, when you went out with the surveyor to test the wetlands, the wood chip pile goes beyond where it could be tested, correct?
Pardon?
This section right here, the wood chip pile comes down.
That's-
So you can't really tell where the
That's
if
correct.
wetlands goes under there. or
That's
not.
correct. That's correct. And they will be trucking those out within the next week or two, and then at that point, when the wood chips are removed, we can go in and locate the back line of the paved parking lot. Which is, we're showing here a dash line, that's what we're calling the approximate end of the paved parking lot. And we can't locate it now because it's covered in chips. The second photograph is standing in this area, looking at this stump pile. And I don't know if you saw photographs from prior to this. You probably did, when it was a much larger pile. A considerable amount of this is gone. Had the weather been better, it probably all would have been gone at this time.
Just so you know, I live in that neighborhood, I drive by there many days, so
Yeah.
I've been watching the stuff this
Stuff,
year.
yeah. And they've cleaned up the yard itself as far as the excess equipment and stuff that was there that isn't used anymore, or what. The third photograph that you see is in the back of the wood chip piles in this area, and you can see the vegetation has really not been disturbed there. So there's quite a large area between here and the brook that still has all its vegetation there. You also can see in the background, you'll see trees. Those are located along the edge of the brook.
He's been loud the whole
I
time.
was gonna say, it makes a lot of noise over there.
A lot of
Yeah.
noise.
And the last picture is just another photograph showing the vegetation behind the piles, just to kind of reinforce that there's a significant amount of existing vegetation between
There is,
there
but there
and the
is
street.
debris in that vegetation.
Yes,
And-
there is,
And a lot of
and-
this stuff is encroached into the wetlands
And
vegetation.
I believe a lot of that debris that's in there, I noticed some pieces of concrete and also a steel I-beam back there. That may have been there before they purchased it. It's something that they can clean up, and I would ask, we will show that. We will be back hopefully next month with an application to show how we're going to improve and restore this area. What I'm trying to do is just update you on the fact that they have been working to improve the area. There's still a couple debris piles here. Over here on the west side of the property, actually over the property line, that have not been moved yet. They're off the big parking lot. And then there's a large area in here that has material that this neighbor has pushed onto the property. I'm not sure what's gonna happen with that area because it may wind up being a lost lawsuit between my client and the
And the
neighbor.
neighbors.
Didn't we have other issues in that area?
Masonic?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
the lines are all messed up.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, so that's pretty much where we are at this point. I'll be happy to ask any questions if there are certain specifics that you'd like to see on our plan when we come back. I will address those. The intent when we come back is to take concrete blocks and make a U-shaped enclosure for the wood chips, keep everything on the parking lot, and make a second U-shaped enclosure for the topsoil that they want to stockpile there.
Does that mean in the future he won't be, I mean, he had a huge pile of tree stumps?
They are not going to be stored there in the future. Once that's gone, that's
Okay,
gone.
because I noted that he brought them to the farm, literally he moved them from one side of the street to the other side of the street to the farm. I mean, I don't want to assume, and I know that's not a wetlands issue.
To the
but-
farm or to John's Refuse?
No, not to John's Refuge,
okay.
to the farm stand over there, there's the farm stand across the way. So he moved him literally across the street, and he's not near any wetlands as far as I know. I mean, is he gonna not do stumps anymore? I don't see how he's gonna be able to do that.
I think his intention of those stumps came off construction sites where they were building
Right.
houses. And I think his intention in the future is to take them, you know, directly from the site to a place that will dispose of them and not bring them here.
All right, well, but at least I know temporarily he moved them across, some of them across the street. Because I actually was driving by, what caught my attention as his truck was moving from one side of the street, because they had the route blocked, as his truck was moving from one side of the street to the other side of the street, so.
I don't know the status of that. I can look into that for
No,
you people and find out.
It's not important. I think what's important is getting the timeline as to when he's gonna be done getting
Cleaned up.
cleaned up.
Yeah, so
Do you want me
again,
to hold that
he's
action?
working on.
I can pass it back out.
When
Do you want me to hold on to that?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Take it. I bring everything back as you can see.
Okay,
Oh,
so
we need-
just in addition to the wetland delineation, I've
Said that,
had
I wrote notes on mine.
discussions with the soil scientist on his thoughts on restoration here in this area, and that and a planting plan will be added to this plan when we come back with the next month.
Yep. Cleaning, planting, and non-encroachment plan.
Yeah, and again, the plantings will be somewhat directed to show a line of demarcation that they're not gonna go over.
And I'm assuming, just for your education, I'm assuming you're aware this is the second time that he's been here for this, so whatever plans you put in place, we'd like them to be such that we don't have them back here again.
Yeah, and I think, I know from my fact standpoint, I don't want to keep coming back here either. And I would hope that he's kind of learned his lesson and he's going to move forward with a clean and open site.
Okay, thank you,
You're welcome.
thank you. Do we have to do a motion or anything with
No.
this?
No.
We're done.
No.
Thank you, sir, very, very much. Sorry you're here so late. Okay, now on to new business, IWWA number 2019-18, site plan for 30 by 30 foot addition to the existing home to be located within the 100-foot inland wetland review
Upland
area.
review
Upland review area at 449 Forest Road. Owner applicant Giuseppe Diglio.
So you'll recall at our last meeting, I had updated the commission that I had approved this, and
Yes.
this is for a proposed addition that's within 100 feet of an existing stream, so I'm just gonna pass down.
Right, but I had asked for.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, so,
Otherwise I read this over.
Right, so these are just some sketches, and I actually went out to the property after it had rained. Wasn't a heavy, heavy rain, but it does just show that there's a catch basin there.
It floods constantly.
Okay, and so the driveway that you see in that picture is the driveway from the existing house. And the topography, I believe the runoff that's coming down, because I saw what you're talking about, is actually coming down this driveway and floods in here. And that's where you go off, and it's not coming down from here. So I
believe it
did
comes down from
see,
everywhere,
I
but-
did see, right, I did see it here, but just because of how the topography is here, like this is lower than, I think it flows down from this
On heavy
driveway.
rains, that whole area is
Okay.
completely, and it covers
Okay.
the road, so you actually have to go into the other
Yes.
lane to get around.
What route is this again?
Really?
Oh, yeah, this is 22.
So the area where they'd like to do the addition is here.
Right next to the
Um,
brook.
Yes, so anyway, here,
So is that the north side of the house?
yes.
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 Okay,
And can I just
and
ask,
that- yeah, go ahead.
did you cut down the trees before it was approved?
Huh? Did I
No.
cut?
Because there's trees that have been removed right
Right.
here.
No, I believe, so I had approved it, and then at the last meeting, I asked them to come back because of the concerns. So that was, we haven't been in this situation before. So again, I had issued an approval.
Right, but
leading
you
into the
didn't know
meeting.
about the issues that happened in front of the house, that's why.
Right, well, and again, my viewpoint is that this is higher up on the northern side, and the water that's coming down is from the driveway, and it backs up here. It's not actually from the grass area here, because this driveway is actually slightly higher, so I don't see the water coming here
But the
down.
whole house and all of this is up on a ledge, or
Yes.
up on a ridge. And so it is going to drain downward, even though it does come down this driveway. It also comes down the street this way, because this is higher up here.
Yeah,
So there's a slope that comes down this way, so it slopes down,
yeah,
and it fills here. There's a slope this way. This is the low point.
right.
So it is coming from up here, but it is also coming from the driveway right here. Unfortunately, this is where it accumulates.
Right,
And this is always blocked and always full, and this is a hazard in this area. And I just didn't know if by putting an addition here instead of behind the house would be causing more of a problem. And besides that, this distance
mhm.
to the brook is how long, how far?
I think it was 50, about that.
So from the point,
Mm-hmm.
so was there any other options considered?
That, I don't know, that's where the applicant can speak to. Did you look at other options? We were just looking at a
Well-
aerial view and adding on to the back of the house as
Well, the
opposed
house,
to the side.
the back side of the house has the well right there, so I wouldn't be able to, I'd have to move the well.
And where's your septic system?
The septic is actually on the riverside right now, and I got approval from East Shore that I will be moving it to the front of the house.
So you are moving the septic
Yes.
because that's where you wanna put the addition?
Yes.
So, also, the existing driveway, you're proposing to move that to the south side, right?
Yeah, I would move that and plant grass in where the driveway is now.
Which would also cause more of the problem up here.
Right, that's outside of the 100 feet, but that's, something we can,
Was one of the reasons why that's flooding is because that grate gets covered?
Probably,
Well-
but it also backs up there.
A couple years ago, well, a year ago, they repaved the road there, and ever since then, there really hasn't been a problem.
That's not true. I drive by
I
there all the
live there.
time.
Excuse me,
Could you please
the
state
owner,
your name,
Anthony-
please?
Anthony Diglio from 415 Forest Road. And the water does come from the top of the hill where the greenhouse is, it does not come from that lot. And that river never flooded since I was there 22 years.
Never said the river flooded.
The street, they crowned it now. And the water goes down where it's supposed to go now. The
Yeah,
last
they
2 years
fixed the
since
street and-
they repaved the road.
It hasn't been, I mean, if you get like a serious rain, you get a little bit of water there, but it's not like
the other side? Would that add to it?
The driveway's there, it's been there.
No, the proposal.
is
Proposal
Yeah,
to
is
the
well,
other
it
side.
wouldn't be pitched with that.
That's something that they would have to look at. That was the second phase,
Yeah.
was my understanding. The
Yeah.
first phase is the addition, and that's what
Yeah.
was within this commission's jurisdiction. And like I say, in my review, I didn't see the impact because of the depth of that stream, and I know that it's relatively close to the stream, but again, because of the distance, you know, not when it's at its highest peak, but it is a low, it's a
That,
deep.
yeah, that brook dries up in the summertime.
Is it going on slab? Or are you putting a basement?
No, it's on slab, the
On slab.
addition's gone slab.
Um, that stream connects to my backyard, so I know it very well. The backyard and the stream, and I know what it does during the different months of the year.
Yeah.
It never really completely dries up, but it does get very
Yeah,
low.
it gets very, very
It gets very
close.
low, and even at the peak of the flow, it never overruns the bank there.
No.
I know it doesn't. My concern is the road, because even with the new pavement, I've still had to go into the other lane to get around puddles at the bottom of that, right there. I don't know if that'll have an impact or not, but,
So,
if it's going on,
Ashley?
hang on a second, Jerry, if it's going on slab, I don't see much of a problem
Okay.
Go ahead, Jerry.
I'm just wondering, the water accumulation that you're talking about down at the road, is that from uphill runoff, or is there a problem with the drainage in the road?
There's two different problems. It happens to be the low point of a road where on the road itself, it's coming from a slope down.
Yeah,
And then from where the new brewery is, it's slightly downhill from there. And then from
Yeah.
the farm up above, it drains down the driveway and it all accumulates right there.
so his property, house driveway is not a major factor in causing that, correct?
The farm behind it is not that house.
No, yeah,
The
that
house
house, okay.
itself, the driveway itself is lower and would probably be impacted just as bad as the road is.
Yeah, all right. Thanks.
Well,
So what's the distance, 50 feet? Is that what you said?
Mhm.
so do we have, any further discussion on this? If not, do we have a motion one way or the other to approve it or disapprove it or ask for other
Well,
work?
I'll move to approve.
are you, this is almost like I was treating this as like a clarification.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because
Because-
Carrie already approved it.
I had reviewed and approved it.
I'm,
Just
if that's feeling.
I'm okay.
I'm okay too.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much, you guys, for
Thank
coming
you.
in.
Thank you.
Then there's no
I move
motion
to
needed, we're all
maintain
set.
Carrie's approval.
Okay,
Sorry for the late night, guys.
Yes. the
We
ne-
couldn't control the public hearing,
The
sorry.
the next item is discussion of possible text amendment to wetlands regs regarding submittal requirements prior to accepting an application or holding a public hearing.
I would imagine that we probably want to continue this.
Yeah, can we continue the rest of everything?
Yes,
Sure.
so the only thing that I would ask for action on is the budget,
Sure.
just because we're in the budget season, and it's,
do we need to do?
it's easy in that I'm not proposing any increases. The budget includes the basics such as, time for the secretaries.
Do we need to change the secretary's name?
Where's the name here? I don't even see it.
Well, for
Oh,
now,
Michelle.
Michelle will be back,
Oh. But
so.
how about my cookies?
So, we have technical supplies, $75, legal notices, that should be a sufficient amount. I have, miscellaneous business travel, membership to Kakiwick, Southwest Conservation District of Connecticut, $1,500.
Well,
And then I
trust-
have a summary on
I
the back.
trust your judgment on it because you're the
And-
one that's gonna have to maintain it,
Yeah,
so
and Carrie, do you think this is enough?
Yes, yes.
I don't think you get more approved anyway.
I really wouldn't. I mean, the one thing I will say for you all is that we have this professional development money in there. And so It does include miscellaneous seminars. It's only $75, but I would encourage everyone to participate and take advantage of that.
Give that a couple times.
Yep.
maybe.
So,
Maybe she'll be able to do
I move that we approve the budget for the inland wetlands development and conservation.
I'll second that.
that. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Now can we postpone everything else and go home?
can I just make one update? Sorry, I know I just talked for 2 seconds, but I just don't want you guys to get too far behind. So the Trout Unlimited program has really just kind of taken off. So I did meet with Scott Schoonmaker.
You didn't call me.
I know, well, I knew you were away, and this is when Jim Woodworth was able to meet, and Scott Schoonmaker was able to come here. And Scott agreed, he ordered 2 tanks, so it's.
They couldn't find the old ones? Okay.
He agreed to order 2 tanks. They're going to be getting 400 fish eggs for trout eggs,
Awesome.
next November or January, whenever DEP issues those, or delivers the eggs.
That's great. This fella I go to the gym with, they do salmon,
Yes,
and they do it in the New Haven school. They said it's a fantastic project.
yes, so that will be starting next year. We've already connected with a teacher, so it's good. And then I will get the date for the environmental science fair in May.
Yay!
Okay, so we are putting on the next agenda, number 6, new business B, 7A, and B.
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
All
I
right.
move to adjourn.
Okay, Jerry, second it?
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.